I've had EMF sensitivity for about 7 years now. At least bad enough to realize that it was difficult to function in the real world. But I would say that since the first thing I can remember, I have always noticed a difference between myself and others in terms of health, energy, and I didn't know how to fix it. Eventually, there became a breaking point where the body load became so intense that it couldn't take it anymore, and the only thing that it could do was respond in a negative way, which involved ringing in the ears, an intense headache, extreme fatigue, dark circles under the eyes, digestion problems. But I'm just here to make a short video because no one online seems to have figured out how to make yourself 95% better. Some people might have a few pieces of the puzzle figured out, but they're just as confused as anyone else, throwing ideas out there, not leading to the solution. Everyone's touching the surface, okay? But if you really want to start to notice a difference in your life and to feel better, I would recommend these first steps because most likely you have a heavy metal issue. Now, everybody talks about this. But the thing is, no one can give you or seem to find the answer as to why heavy metals cause EMF sensitivity. And even worse still, they prescribe you the wrong test because there's so much misinformation out there. Hair mineral analysis doesn't give you an accurate understanding of the body load or body burden of heavy metals that are causing you to feel like shit. Hair mineral analysis, urine analysis, and blood analysis of heavy metals only show hair mineral analysis and urine analysis show excretion of what the body puts out. Well, if the body isn't getting rid of mercury or aluminum or any other metal because there's nothing to push it out, it's just going to sit there in your body, and the excretion test only shows what your body gets rid of. So it could show, high levels of nickel and arsenic and a little bit of lead. And that might not even really be in your body, it's just passing through from some junk that you might have eaten before. And then when you go to whole blood, that's inaccurate as well, because you're also measuring the serum plasma that your blood floats around in the clear solution. And your body will do anything in the world to keep that plasma balanced, because your blood cells need a perfect pH, they need perfect mineral. For instance, the calcium is going to be perfect in whole blood. But the minute you use a centrifuge and spin the blood down and only test the red blood cells themselves, you remove the serum, then you get an accurate picture of body load and how much junk is in your system, because every 6 months new blood cells are made, and they basically go around the body and roam around, and they pick up, let's just say, even amount of everything in your body. So it's a great way to tell. So, red blood cell, RBC test, will tell you what you're deficient in mineral-wise and what heavy metals you have in your body. It's exactly what you've been looking for if you've looked this far. And hair mineral analysis probably made you feel like shit because you had 5 or 10 different metals that you're putting out, and you can't understand why, you're not feeling much better by trying to push them out. I'm going to put a link in the description where to get the test. Unfortunately, the test is only $150, which I paid, but it was through a friend who uses doctors' data. This is the only website I could find that sells the test to the public, and they charge $250, so they make $100 on top of the test. But it is what it is. It's the best first step to getting junk out of your system. And the whole idea with heavy metals is trying to make yourself less conductive in a conductive environment. When you have magnetic, electric, dirty electricity, EMFs floating around, all they're doing is energizing your body to some degree more than someone else. And it's almost as if your cells are getting a slow shock. That's the reason why we notice it and other people don't. Because I couldn't understand it for the life of me. But if you watch certain videos like Magda Havas, she shows that the cells in anybody's body will start to shrink together and clump. She calls it rouleau formation. So the first step is getting the test done and establishing a baseline as to why you're getting these symptoms. I used to work underneath the cell phone tower, radar. I still work under a cell phone tower now that I've healed myself all day long, and the worst symptoms that I get are a small amount of ringing in the ears, which is quite manageable, and every once in a while a very slight headache, although I'm still healing. And just to put it out there, you must have been extremely sick your whole life to get to this point where you've become sensitive to EMFs. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes years and years to develop. And even before I became EMF sensitive, I would always assume that there was something wrong because I didn't feel or perceive to feel as good as other people just by observing them. So you're going to get the test, RBC, heavy metal test. And you're also going to request a CBC complete blood count. Because when you get to this point where you're EMF sensitive, you have such an intense body burden that getting 9, 10, 15 hours of sleep at night, you still don't feel recovered. Which means you got a lot of stuff going on. And just to put the list out there so that this will be your first tick to take off the list. Heavy metals, parasites, mineral imbalance, amino acids, fatty acids, so I'm just throwing the video out there right now because nobody has a clear answer for anyone. They either want you to pay a whole bunch of money, and you know what? By putting something out there free, I hear from people that, you won't appreciate it, you're never going to listen, but if you got to the point where I got and no one had any answers, you'll just be freaking out trying to get better. So let's stop it with this misinformation. Put in the comments below when somebody out there has done the $250 test, which is dirt cheap, because I'm sure you've already spent thousands of dollars, as I did, on Faraday cages, tons of different types of minerals, and not understanding why things were going the way they were. The body is born in the 21st century. We have an industrial grade problem that never existed on Earth until this time, with so much pollutants in the air, in the water, in the food, especially in America because Monsanto and the water fluorination, the chlorine, the chloramine, if you're familiar with all these terms or not, but it all puts what I call a body burden on you. I probably had a 90% body burden in my 20s, and before the Industrial Revolution in the 21st century, it would have taken somebody to get in their 90 to 95-year-old range to feel the way I did, because I did feel like I was 95 years old every once in a while. And it is possible to heal yourself. If I had pictures of before, I had dark circles, eyes were really unclear, a super foggy brain. Let's get rid of it all in less than 6 months for most people. Fortunately, I didn't have any mercury fillings, or root canals, or cavities at all, which I got lucky with that. So, let's assume that you had the RBC test done to give yourself a baseline, and you took the CBC blood test, which we'll talk about later as to why it is so important to take that. But you're really going to notice a difference once we take a look at the CBC and do a parasite protocol, because number one, everyone has parasites. And number two, doctors aren't trained in how to read the CBC test. They don't know how to look at your white blood cells count, which there are multiple different types of white blood cells out there, and give you an answer as to why you feel like shit all the time. Because I can almost guarantee that if you're to this point, your adrenal glands are all blocked up, and you're wondering, well, it's just adrenal stress, they can burn out, and it's just not possible unless you have parasites. Let's go to heavy metals. If you have ever had fillings, eaten large ocean fish, swordfish, and the RBC test came back with levels of mercury, then you're going to have to take DMSA. It's the best way to pull mercury out of the body. DMSA works orally, and DMSA also works with the suppository. Suppository obviously works better because it bypasses the liver, but the oral route works just fine. And I did a recommended dosage of DMSA, which you need to look up online, every 6 hours. So I did one dose, waited 6 hours, did another dose, waited another 6 hours, did another dose. So I did 3 doses. I started feeling right here, a lot of metal pulling out, because it also works in other metals besides mercury. So if your RBC test came back and it said that you had high levels of cesium, which is radioactive, it will also pull something like that out of the body, which has a very heavy atomic number on the chart, just like mercury. They're both extremely heavy on the chart. And lead's up there, but mercury and cesium are really up there. And cesium will also help, DMSA will also help to pull out other metals as well, but there's something else that really helped me out initially, EDTA, calcium EDTA. We're going to use that, not magnesium EDTA, because when EDTA gets in your body to pull the metal out, the first thing it grabs onto is calcium. And then it jumps up the ladder, if you want to call it, or actually down the ladder, and starts to grab onto heavier and heavier things. So it'll jump from calcium to another good mineral for your body, kind of pull it around, and then it'll jump to something like aluminum, which likes to actually collect in your lungs and chest first before it goes into your brain and starts to cause memory issues, which it did in me. And just so you're aware, EDTA does not work orally. It's not effective. The stomach acids destroy the effectiveness of it almost 100%. So to make it effective, I bought a product called Kelatox, Kelatox suppository, and would do one every day for about 7 days. And then I let off, and as the case with both of these, I would do 3 sets of DMSA, one every 6 hours, and I would stop for a week. And with the EDTA, the max I would do is a whole week on, but you know how your body is, and I can't make any medical recommendations on here because I'm not a doctor. But you need to replenish the minerals in your body by taking a vegetable and fruit-based multivitamin. And the big thing here is taking plenty of whey protein and eating plenty of meat, because I don't want to hear it if you're vegan. I don't want to hear it if you think you're getting enough in your system to help. If you're eating plenty of meat, it's not enough, because amino acids and protein help to pull the waste products out of the body. If you're in such a condition as an EMF sensitivity, you are deficient in so many things it's not even funny. It took me forever to try and understand that, because I was putting whey on no problem. I was eating plenty of meat, yet I was still deficient in amino acids because it was being used up to get junk out of the body, and it just wasn't good enough because so much was depleted. Okay. So now we've gotten to the point where the RBC test came back. You have results, you have a baseline of where your heavy metal load is. Unfortunately, it doesn't check for aluminum, which is, in my opinion, extremely important because it's a neurotoxin just like mercury. And there will be a more in-depth video as to what to eat off of, EMF recommendations, things like that, because obviously you don't want to eat out of an aluminum pan cooking off of it. It's going to just load it up into your body. But you've taken the RBC test, you've taken the CBC complete blood cell test. You started to check on your mercury levels, and if you have any mercury fillings, they need to come out by a dentist that knows what he's doing, removes them safely, so that when he removes them, you don't breathe any of the mercury vapors in and get them into your gut and make you sicker. You got to find a safe dentist out there. And unfortunately, I've never had any cavities, so I can't give too many recommendations on what to have the cavities filled with. But what I can say, from other knowledge that I found in someone who has 35 years in knowledge on teeth, mercury, root canals, you want to fill the cavities with zinc oxide. Unfortunately, it's only a temporary filling, so every year you'd have to get the filling redone. But it is safe for the body. It's not harmful. The other thing is root canals. You've gotten to this point, and it's not related to the heavy metals, but when you have a root canal, I have been told that the body has no voids. So when you remove or make a void in the body, something takes its place. And in this case, in that open space in between your jaw and the hole in the tooth, you're going to have so much bacteria growing in there that you're never going to get better unless the root canal is removed. Tooth removed. It just is how it is. In this guy's opinion, root canals are unnecessary. It's a scam. The cavity can almost always be treated and healed on its own once the proper nutrition is given. So you go to the dentist, he removes the mercury fillings, he removes the teeth with root canals. In place of the mercury fillings, he puts zinc oxide in. And then you can start doing chelation, pulling the heavy metals out. The only other things that I would be worried about are any types of metal implants, plates, screws. But from what I hear, the body doesn't really attack them too much because they're just sitting there and it's not in the direct bloodstream of the muscle tissue. So you've gotten to this point where you're taking the mercury out of your body. You're taking whey protein. You're taking things that the body needs. And on the RBC test, it also showed a deficiency in healthy minerals. In my case, I was low in manganese and boron. And I started taking boron the first couple days. I would get really agitated, but afterwards I noticed an increase in muscle speed. My reflexes were smoother. And it's just to show that having the right mineral analysis, heavy metal test, is the way to go. I mean, I spent hundreds of dollars on hair mineral analysis for heavy metals, and it led to absolutely nothing. Nada. It's well worth the $250. Don't bullshit yourself. You need a baseline. You don't have a baseline, you're not even going to know what was wrong with you to begin with. Don't you want to know what's wrong with you before you get better? Let's go to removing the heavy metals, supplementing healthy minerals in the body that you lack. And I'm just going to make this assumption that the majority of people that are EMF sensitive are in the millennial range. Why is that? There's a lot of different reasons for it, but the main ones are your parents. Your parents were already toxic, not as bad as you. And when you were born, your mother passed on her toxins to you, or some of them at least. And even more important than that, your father, which it would seem very noticeable to you, is he passed along most likely a methylation deficiency in his genes, because he was most likely had a methylation issue himself from all the junk in this environment of his when he grew up. And methylation, which is part of the glutathione going on in your body, is like vitamin C in some animals, which they use to detox. It's an antioxidant. But in our case, we don't make vitamin C. So we use the glutathione pathway to detox the body. Without the methylation cycle working, since being born, we're just being bombarded with things and can't seem to heal. So that's the first thing right from birth. In my case, I was given a high level of antibiotics as a baby, which killed off all the gut bacteria, or let's just say the majority of them, and left these open voids in the body for other things to take over. So I'm starting to paint this picture. There are no voids in the body. You're already given junk as a child, which means areas in the body where healthy things can be are already filled up with junk before you're even given a chance to be resilient and have a healthy system. So I would say that most people's body burden by the time they're just born is almost 20% out of 100. So as a child, you're only recovering 80% of the way every time you sleep. That 20% is not there. You're already stressed out. And the thing that really I couldn't understand for the life of me is I was being told I had a parasitic infection. And this is where the complete blood cell count comes in, because everything was in the normal range. Everything. But if you know what you're doing and you're not a dumbass doctor, you can look at my eosinophils and neutrophil level and realize that neutrophil to lymphocyte level, there's a percentage on the complete blood cell count test. And there should be a 2-to-1 ratio of neutrophils to lymphocytes. I had a 1-to-1 ratio of neutrophils to lymphocytes, which means my body was making so many white blood cells, and something was killing them. This is still being rebalanced in my body, so I have to retake a test in 6 months when all the red blood cells have been, when the white blood cells have had time to get their numbers back up. But the even bigger thing, that is a good indicator, is the other types of white blood cells there are in the body. And the body sometimes only makes certain types of white blood cells when there's a problem. They only pop up when they have to. Why would the body waste all this energy making white blood cells that only fight a certain thing? And in my case, I had eosinophil levels that were about 140. Now, it was in the normal range because I think that the range was 0 to 250. But the body should have 0 eosinophils if it is healthy. In which case, when you have a void in your body, because a void was made since a childhood with the antibiotics and the junk in my system passed on from the mother, those voids get filled up with anything that is passed on to you. The eosinophils were high in my body because it's an indication of white blood cells that are fighting parasitic infection, and you can look that up. But I didn't take it very seriously. The person that I was being counseled by to get better has developed a protocol to flush any parasites out of the system, and I would say that I have 95 to almost 100% removed them from my system